Chapter 6. The Tavern. Evergloom was, for all intents and purposes, a city. Compared to Gloam's End, there were more shops, more people, and more bustle. Fisherfolk shouted orders from the docks, traders haggled over their wares. The streets were packed as bodies weaved through the crowds in constant motion. Kai knew this place. He'd walked these streets as a boy, delivering supplies with his father, then later running errands for Korik. Every turn and every alley was carved into his memory. As Eira and Kai cut through a narrower street, the atmosphere shifted. Lanterns burned red and amber above doorways where women leaned against frames. The women called out to them with low and inviting voices, which only made them hasten their pace. Music drifted from open windows, slow and rhythmic. The scent of perfume mixed with smoke in the air. Kai kept his eyes keenly forward. Eira, on the other hand, seemed entirely unbothered. She glanced at the establishments with the same detached curiosity she'd shown the rest of the town. They emerged onto a wider street, and the red lanterns faded behind them. A crowd had gathered ahead, their laughter carried over the din of the town. Eira slowed, curious. Kai stopped beside her. In the center of the crowd, a man worked a pair of crude puppets, wooden figures with exaggerated features. One wore a tattered black dress, its face painted ghastly white with hollow eyes. The other was a simple fisherman, broad-shouldered and brave. "And then," the puppeteer declared in a theatrical voice, "the great and terrible Valthera said, 'Give me your fish, or I'll turn you into a toad.'" The witch puppet lunged at the fisherman. The crowd booed and booed. But the brave fisherman said, "You can take my fish, witch, but you'll never take my dignity." The fisherman puppet stood tall. "Dignity?" said the witch puppet. "What's that? Can I eat it?" The crowd roared with laughter. Kai found himself grinning. It was stupid, crude even, but it felt good. These people needed tiny acts of defiance, and this was one of them. He glanced at Eira. Her expression was unreadable. Her eyes were fixed on the performance. For a moment, toward the end of it, he thought he saw something like amusement flicker across her face. Then it was gone. "This place is nothing how I imagined," she murmured. Kai scratched his head. "You've never been here?" "No, but..." She paused. "It's good to see some places still feel alive." "More than alive," Kai corrected. "This is a runner's dream. Plenty of places to trade and pick up a tread or two. And I guess that's important. If you haven't noticed already, we don't get daylight here. It makes it difficult to grow our own crops. We rely on trade." Eira hummed in agreement. "We're also stopping in the tavern for a meal, right?" "Yeah, that, and I want to map out our tread. Everything south of the Black Sentinel is new territory for me. I've never run those ruins." "Korik never sent you there?" "No reason to. Nothing lives there except ghosts." "True," Eira said quietly. "Just ghosts." Kai gestured toward a worn sign above a doorway. The hollow lantern. Warm light spilled out as well as boisterous voices. The clink of glasses carried into the street. As they stepped inside, heat from the hearth wrapped around them, chasing away the cold. The tavern was packed with people sharing stories over mugs of ale. The air was thick with old spills and roasted meat, scents ground into the wood itself. Soot stained the walls. Above, faint carvings marked the beams, runes, or symbols dulled by time. Some still glowed weakly, remnants of old wards against the Nightshawl. Kai and Eira took stools at the bar. The barkeeper approached. He was a tall, dark man with a bald head and forearms like logs. With precise, almost theatrical movement, he idly polished a chipped mug with a worn rag. Right then, he said with a rough but friendly voice. Name's Ven. What can I get ya? Drinks to start, yeah? Kai motioned to Eira. Oh, I don't have any coin, she admitted. A runner without coin. That was new. It's on me, Kai said quickly. Oh, thanks. A strong ale, if you have it. Ven's smile broadened. The darker one it is, love. He turned to Kai. How about you, mate? Kai froze. He never actually ordered ale before, but with Eira sitting right there, ordering it like it was nothing. Same. The barkeep leaned on the counter, looking him over. Oi, no offense, mate, but you look a right nipper for a proper pour. You're old enough, yeah? Heat crept up Kai's neck. He raised his palm. The Rune runner's mark shimmered faintly in the firelight. Ven chuckled, nodding his head. Ah, right then. Got the mark. Means you earned it. 2 ales coming up. He turned back to the bar, humming low under his breath. Eira rotated to face Kai. So, there's something obvious I need to ask about. What's that? He asked. You're a man, Eira said. Kai blinked hard. Thanks for noticing. Eira didn't smile. I'm serious. I've never seen a man handle runes. Ever. It's completely foreign to them. But his Myr doesn't respond. Her eyes narrowed. How are you and Korik able to do it? He knew this conversation would come, eventually. It always did when someone watched him work. What are you? They'd ask, even when they didn't say it out loud. He could see it in Eira's eyes now, that same guarded curiosity. He swiveled on the stool to face forward, staring at the bar. I don't know, he admitted. Korik taught me. My father could use them too. He always said it ran in our blood, something my grandfather passed down to him, and then to me. Your grandfather, she prompted. Do you know his story? Kai shook his head. No, not really. Bloodline explained the what, not the how, or the why. And Kai had long ago stopped expecting anyone, including himself, to understand it. Eira's eyes stayed on him, assessing, seemingly waiting for something more. That's unusual, isn't it? She said after a while, tapping her finger on the countertop. No tales? No legends about the men who became rune runners? Kai shrugged, feigning disinterest, though her question gnawed at him. He finally surrendered all he knew. Korik says my grandfather was gifted, that the Coven hunted him, but whenever I ask for details I get vague answers. He frowned. I know his name was Dolovik. There's a small town north of Darknest named after him. He was blind. Escaped from a dungeon out at sea kept by the witches. My grandmother met him in Darkest Vale. He was a rune runner, but was never leading the pack like Korik is. He paused. That's all I know. That answer seemed to satisfy her, Kai thought, because she didn't push further. Instead, she leaned back, letting the conversation rest. You've never actually ordered ale before, have you? Eira asked after a while. She was grinning. Kai scoffed. Of course I have. Uh-huh. And you just happened to hesitate before saying the same? You looked like you were about to choke. I was considering my options, he replied. Right. Because you strike me as someone with such eclectic taste in ales. Before Kai could defend himself, Ven arrived with their drinks balanced expertly on a worn wooden tray. He set them down in front of them before moving to tend to another patron. Eira reached for hers immediately, swirling the black liquid. Well, go on then, she said, grinning. Let's see if you can actually stomach it. Kai lifted his mug, catching the sharp, earthy scent rising from the foam. He'd expected something like the watered-down wine served at the temple festivals in Barandark, maybe a touch stronger. But the first swallow hit like a fist to the throat. The bitterness coated his tongue, thick and acrid. Nothing like anything he'd tasted before. He forced himself to swallow without coughing further, willing his expression to stay neutral. "How was it?" she asked. Fine, Kai managed, setting the mug down a bit harder than necessary. Ven snapped back over to them. "How about some wild boar soup? Our favorite here, if you're interested." Kai and Eira exchanged a glance before nodding. "Yes, please," Eira said first. "Brilliant, love. You won't regret it." He was grinning wide, already turning to relay the order to the kitchen. Eira then lifted her mug and took a long pull, drinking with greedy confidence like someone who'd earned it. When she set it back down, foam clung to the rim where her lips had been. "It's clear that you're not from around here," Kai said. "Do you call the Myr'ides your home?" "I've been to a lot of places," Eira said, her tone softening. "But nowhere near long enough to call a home, if we're being honest." Kai frowned. "Surely you must have a rune minder, at least." Rune minder? "Yeah, like Korik. Someone who handles your treads, assigns prosilium gleaning, endorses your claims. A minder." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached beneath her cloak and produced a crumpled map, laying it flat on the bar. The parchment was worn, its edges curling as she smoothed them with her palms. "Let's talk about that later," she said, dismissing the question entirely. "For now, let's focus on the tread." She fished a stub of graphite from her satchel, pointing to a dot near the top. "We're here, Evergloom. Here's the Black Sentinel, down near the far end of the bay, and just south of that are the ruins." Kai studied the map, rubbing his chin. "That's the most direct route, sure." "Exactly," Eira replied, tracing a line with the graphite. "But that's also the route we're going to avoid." "What? Why?" Eira tapped the map near the Black Sentinel. "The relic. We need to keep it far away from their pretty little noses, unless you want to invite trouble again." I'd rather not." She drew another line inland from the Black Sentinel, stopping at a dark blotch on the parchment. "Do you know what this is?" Kai squinted, tilting his head slightly. Water stain?" "No, fool." Eira let out an exasperated sigh. "Guess again." He grimaced. It wasn't the teasing that bothered him, but he knew exactly what the dark patch represented. This far south was foreign territory, but everyone had heard the stories. "A wound in the world," Kai said slowly, his voice dropping. "Older than the fracturing. Older than the Nightshawl itself." He looked up at her. "The Abyssal Maw." Eira's smirk confirmed it. "A sprawling network of canyons and chasms," she said, "blown out and torn asunder from the ancient war. Almost no one goes there, which is exactly why we're taking the route through it." Kai shook his head. "I've heard too many cautionary tales. Winds cold enough to freeze breath midair. Caravans swallowed whole. You want us to go in there?" "The Maw is unkind to those who don't respect it," Eira agreed. "But it's still safer than taking the obvious path and leading Valthera's Night Coven straight to us." "Yeah, it'll be a risk." Kai's hand moved to the map, his finger tracing the edge of the dark blotch. "Or maybe it won't be. My father's incantation. That's right. The Path of Precision." Eira raised an eyebrow. "The what?" "One of the incantations from his work. It finds hidden paths, routes that aren't obvious." Kai looked up at her. "It leads the caster to where they need to be." "That's actually useful." Eira leaned back slightly, reassessing him. She smirked. "Now you're using your head." Ven returned, balancing two steaming bowls of soup in his hands. The rich aroma of spices and slow-cooked wild game drifted upward, thick enough to taste. Kai's stomach growled loud enough to startle Eira. "Here you go," Ven said, setting the bowls down with care. "Give us an holler if you need anything, yeah?" With a nod, he turned to tend to the other patrons, his deep voice cutting through the hum of conversation. Eira picked up her spoon and stirred the broth, watching steam rise in lazy spirals. After a moment, she glanced at Kai. "Your people are generous." "Surviving under the Nightshawl tends to bring people together." Kai shrugged, scooping a bite of tender boar and broth-soaked root vegetables. "We look out for each other where we can. Otherwise, what point is there in living?" Eira's gaze settled over the celebration and laughter in the tavern. Kai noticed a curious and distant expression settle over her features. Her fingers traced the rim of her bowl as steam curled around her hand. Finally, she spoke before taking her first bite. "Maybe it's not such a bad way to live," she said. Kai watched her for a moment longer, then turned his attention back to his own meal. The soup was rich and hearty. The faint heat of the spices warmed him from the inside out. The tavern was nearly empty by the time they finished up. They stayed so long that the churn gave way to the veil. Outside, the Nightshawl had thickened into an almost impenetrable shroud. The lanterns strung along the streets flickered weakly, their glow swallowed by the dense fog rolling in from the coast. Even with their wards and boons, venturing beyond the town's edge now would be reckless. Navigation would be nearly impossible, and the Nightshaw's time of veil held no mercy for those who lost their way. Eira set her spoon down with a soft clink against the bowl. "Well, we're not leaving now," she stated, as if reading Kai's thoughts. "We'll be wandering blind past the first bend." Kai huffed. He hated losing time, but she was right. The gloom was too thick, and the town had already settled into its resting hours. The streets would be empty soon, save for the occasional Veil Watch patrolling the docks. With a resigned sigh, Kai raised his hand to flag Ven down. The barkeep was wiping down one of the messiest tables, but caught the gesture and ambled over, wiping his hands on a worn cloth. "Is there something else I could do for you, lad?" "We need 2 rooms for the night," Kai said. Ven's face fell slightly. "Ah, sorry about that, mate. Only got 1 left, I'm afraid." Kai turned to Eira. She merely shrugged, clearly unbothered. "Fine," he muttered. "We'll take it." Ven's grin returned. "Right then, I'll have it sorted for you." With a casual nod, he strolled off toward the back of the tavern. "Don't get any ideas," Eira said, arching a brow as she leaned back in her chair. Kai rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding her gaze. The realization settled in with an awkward dread. He wasn't an idiot. Eira was sharp, unpredictable, and more than a little dangerous. But she was also going to be the first woman he'd share a room with. The heat crept up the back of his neck despite his best efforts to keep his expression neutral. Eira, of course, didn't seem remotely bothered, which somehow made it worse. "Get a grip, boy. You face down Voidkin. Surely you can handle this." He could practically hear Korik's voice in his head, bewildered by his discomfort. Kai rubbed the back of his neck. It's not like that." "Uh-huh." She looked entirely too amused. "At least it's practical," he said, a bit too quickly. "1 room saves us some coin." "Right. Practical." Her smirk widened. "And here I thought you might have been nervous about sharing a room." Yeah, he muttered, waving a hand dismissively. "Just try not to steal the covers." Eira let out a sharp laugh, tilting her head as if she'd just heard something entirely absurd. "Covers? Oh no, you've got it all wrong." She leaned forward, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "You're sleeping on the floor." Later, when they'd settled into the small dimly lit room, Eira claimed the bed while Kai set about making himself a place to sleep near their collection of gear, his cloak serving as a makeshift cushion. The space was cramped, and the smell of wood smoke bled through the floorboards from the hearth below. Eira sat on the edge of the bed and reached for the buckles of her armor. She peeled off the outer layers, casting them aside. When she tugged her shirt loose to adjust it, Kai caught a glimpse of her skin beneath. Smooth, but covered with intricate markings. Runes sprawled across her shoulders and down her arms, curling like vines. They shimmered in the candlelight, almost alive, etched into her flesh like a forgotten, forbidden language. Kai found himself staring. He'd seen inscriptions in Myr'ides such as these before, on old stones and relics, even on the crystal itself, but never woven into someone's skin. Eira noticed Kai's gaze. She pulled her shirt back into place and turned to face him, one eyebrow raised. "Something on your mind?" Kai blinked, pulling his focus away as he tugged off his boots. "Those markings, what are they?" "Tattoos," she said flatly, sliding under the covers. "I can see that, but what do they mean?" "They mean I've made choices." She turned onto her side, her back to him now. "That's all. Just choices." "Good ones?" "Bad ones." The room settled into silence, save for the faint creaks of the inn and the distant murmur of voices below. Kai lay back on his makeshift bed, staring at the ceiling. "My father made bad choices too," he said quietly. "He got himself killed chasing revenge. He let it consume him." Eira stayed very quiet, but he could tell she was listening. "So, if you won't tell me where you're from, or about your tattoos," he continued, "at least tell me about your family." The silence stretched long enough that he thought she might ignore him entirely. Then she sighed. The kind of sigh that comes when you're too tired to keep guarded. "We're all women, my family," Eira spoke in a hushed voice. "I have a lot of sisters." She paused. "They're not kind." Kai waited, sensing there was more. "They're all strong with Prismir," she continued. "I'm the weakest among them. Or, at least they think so." Her fingers traced the edge of the blanket. "But my mother, she always chooses me over them. I suppose she's like a rune minder, like Korik is to you, except she doesn't really love me." Kai frowned. "Why you then, if they're so powerful?" "Because I guess I'm useful in ways they're not." Her voice carried bitterness. "She gives me her attention because I produce what she needs." She paused. "The others see her investing in me, and they hate me for it." Kai nodded. "So they make you pay for being chosen." "Every chance they get," Eira said tightly. "The only reason I'm alive is because my mother decided I'm worth the effort. She protects me from them." She fell quiet. "The moment I stop being useful." Kai turned his head to look at her outline in the darkness. "That's horrible. So you just keep proving yourself, over and over." "Every churn," Eira said quietly. "Or you run away," Kai said. Eira went very still. He thought he overstepped, but then she said, "Yeah, or you run away." "That's an awful way to live, Eira." "That's the roll of the dice, Kai. We don't choose our families, but we can choose our friends." "Is that what we are now? Friends?" Eira snorted. "Don't get ahead of yourself. I said we can choose them. Doesn't mean I've made any decisions on you yet." Right. You're not sure that you can trust me." Kai rolled over on the bed, made out of their satchels and cloaks, propping himself on one elbow to face Eira. "What would it take to earn that?" he asked. She turned over on the mattress to meet him. "Depends on why you're doing this. Are you in this for yourself? Or something bigger? Kai didn't hesitate. I want to help people. I want to free us from the Nightshawl. Unite Deneta. I know it sounds impossible, but we've got to try. Noble. Mine's not so idyllic. Why? What's yours? To get away from your sisters? Part of it. Eira glanced down before locking eyes with Kai. Mine. She paused. For Kai, the weight of her next words were palpable. Mine is to murder the Night Coven. Kai stared at her. The bluntness of it caught him off guard. Murder the Night Coven. Not weaken them, not undermine their power. Kill them. He spent cycles thinking about the Nightshawl in abstract terms, lifting it, freeing people from it, helping Korik break through its mysteries. But he'd never put it quite so directly. To end the Nightshawl, the witches had to die. Somehow, framing it that way, with such cold finality, made it feel more real, but also more impossible. The witches were immortal and could not die. You say it like you've already figured out how, Kai said. Eira's gaze floated up to the ceiling as she flopped back onto her back. I'm working on it. The dagger, he probed. That's part of it, isn't it? Maybe, but it's not the whole plan, she said. Kai rolled uncomfortably against the supplies behind him. Our goals aren't that different, you know. If you kill the Coven, the Nightshawl falls. People go free. That's what I want, too. No, Eira said, turning her head to look at him. Your goal is noble. You want to save people. Mine is revenge. They took everything from me, Kai. And one day, I'll return the favor. She paused. If saving people happens along the way, fine. But that's not why I'm doing this. Kai didn't know what to say to that. The raw honesty in her voice left no room for argument or comfort. After a moment, he simply nodded. Eira turned back to face the ceiling, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Get some sleep, Kai. We leave at the first sight of the churn. He laid back, his head resting against the rough fabric of a rolled cloak. The darkness of the room pressed against his closed eyes, heavier than sleep, and his thoughts, unbidden, began to slip. The steady hum of the crystal faded into the edges of memory, and before he could resist, Kai was falling, plunging into the depths of a dream. It lurched Kai directly into the moment he spent cycles trying to forget. His small hands clung desperately to Nia's wrist. The shadows had already coiled around her waist, writhing tendrils pulling her backward into the dark between the trees. Her eyes locked onto his, wide with terror she was trying to hide for his sake. Kai, let go, she gasped, but he couldn't. His fingers dug harder, nails biting into her skin. No, I won't. His voice cracked, high and desperate. Every muscle in his body strained against the inevitable. The Voidkin surged forward, wrapping higher around her torso. Nia's strength drained from her limbs, but even as the darkness consumed her, her voice cut through his panic with terrible clarity. Remember, Kai? Her mouth trembled. Darkness can't hold us forever. Then the shadows pulled, and the force wrenched her from his grasp so violently that it threw him forward onto his belly. His palms scraped against the roots and dirt. He screamed her name as the mist hunter dragged her into the writhing dark, her eyes holding his until the very last moment. The shadows dissipated. She was gone. But the dream didn't end there. Kai was back in the village now, stumbling into the clearing on bloodied knees. His clothes were torn and filthy. The other children stood in a half circle, staring. Their parents menaced behind them with grim, condemnatory expressions. Maldo, one of the bigger boys, stepped forward. His face was twisted with disgust. "You left her." "I didn't. I tried." Kai was on the verge of tears. "You wandered too far," said Quella, tears streaming down her face. "She went after you, and now she's dead because of you." "I didn't know," said Kai. "The Voidkin, they came and they—" "Liar!" Maldo shoved him hard enough that Kai stumbled backwards. "You ran! You let them attack her and you ran!" "No!" Tears streamed down Kai's face. He tried to hide them in his hands. "I tried to hold on to her. I tried to pull her back." But they didn't believe him. He could see the accusation in their eyes. Even the adults said nothing in his defense. His father stood at the edge of the clearing. His broad shoulders, which had carried Kai on them so many times, began to shake. His knees buckled, and he sank to the ground. This mountain of a man, collapsing like the earth, had been ripped from beneath him. Kai's mother reached for him, but his father didn't respond. He just knelt there in the dirt. This giant reduced to rubble, and the sight of it was almost worse than losing Nia. Because Kai had done this. He had broken the unbreakable. His mother wept beside his father, her hand on his heaving back, but she wouldn't look at Kai either. "It's your fault she's dead," Maldo said. Each word was like the blow of a hammer. "It's your fault, Kai. You killed her." The other children echoed it, their voices overlapping until they became a chant. "Your fault! Your fault! You killed her! Your fault!" Kai sank to his knees in the dirt and covered his ears, but he couldn't block it out. The words burrowed into him like poisoned vines of a memory. "I should have been stronger," he thought. In the dream, Korik pushed through the group of children and stormed up to him. "Right then, boy. Why do you want to be a Rune runner?" Korik's voice rumbled. Kai's jaw tightened. "So it never happens again." "So what never happens again?" The words tore out of him. "So I'm never too weak to save someone again." Korik sneered. "Bollocks. That's not how this works, lad." He leaned in close, and his voice dipped to something almost dangerous. "Runes ain't gonna make you some hero who saves everyone. That's fantasy for young pups. And you just buried your sister. You want to learn this trade? Then you best understand. People die. Good people. People you love. And all the magic in the bloody world won't stop that." He straightened, crossing his arms. "So, I'll ask you again, and this time, give me the real answer. Why?" Kai opened his mouth, but his voice was already gone. The dream fractured. Nia's face flickered before him, smiling, laughing, then terrified, then consumed by shadow. The village children's accusations echoed again. His father's silence pressed down on his conscience, and beneath it all, the verdict he carried like a noose around his neck. It was all my fault. Kai woke with a sharp intake of breath, panting heavily for a moment after. His heart was pounding. Despite the chill biting against his skin, a sheen of sweat dampened his brow. Eira was crouched just an arm's length away, watching him intently. "You were talking in your sleep," she said. Did I say anything?" "This Nia you called out for," Eira said carefully. "Who is she to you?" The name hit him like a fist. He nodded. "My sister. She was 11, and I was 5 when..." He swallowed the words and tried again. When the Voidkin killed her." Eira dropped her shoulders. "I'm so sorry." Kai's hands curled into a fist in his lap. Eira was about to rise when Kai caught her. "About last night." "When you asked me why I became a Rune runner." Eira crouched back down. She listened. "I didn't give you the whole truth. After Nia died, our family fell apart. My father, he was this mountain of a man, built like an ox. He was full of stories and experiences, and never showed any weakness. But after she was gone, he was entirely broken. He barely spoke to us, for almost a full cycle. Grief does that to a person, Kai. Yeah, but one churn he picked up his hatchet and told my mother he was going to make the witches pay for what they'd done. To bring Nia peace. Kai shook his head. Eira's eyes darkened as her expression changed to one of recognition. Retribution is a powerful draw. I know it well. Yes, but he never came back. And my mother, if it wasn't for Korik's support, she might have given up. She was already halfway there. Sorry to hear that. Eira, when I said I wanted to help people, I meant it, Kai continued, steadying his emotions. But it's not noble. It's because I couldn't save my sister, and I couldn't save my father. And I thought that if I could get strong enough to save someone else's sister, someone else's family, then... Eira helped complete the thought. Then what happened to you would mean something. Something like that, he said. But now I know whatever I do won't bring them back. I have to keep going because that's what they would have wanted for me. Eira watched him until the hardness of her expression melted into quiet contemplation. You and I are not so different after all. Your sense of justice is just pointed differently than mine. I think I needed to be honest with myself as much as you, he said. Eira nodded slowly, then straightened. Now I understand why the Crystal chose you. Kai looked up at her. You do? The blade doesn't need an epic hero, Kai. It just needs someone who can endure. She held his gaze. Someone who understands what sacrifice costs, and does it anyway. She nodded in certainty. That's what balance requires. Resolve. Kai didn't know if she was right, but he felt her faith in that belief. And he allowed himself to feel it, too. Eira began gathering her gear. Without ceremony, she pulled her shirt over her head and tossed it onto the bed, standing in nothing but the undergarments beneath her leggings. The tattoos sprawled across her skin were even more intricate in the paleness of the churn, winding down her arms, across her ribs, disappearing beneath the fabric at her waist. She reached for her padded tunic. Kai jerked his gaze away. Heat flooded his face. Could you? I mean... Eira raised her eyebrow. Could I what? I don't know, maybe turn around or something? He said, staring very intently at the floorboards. She let out a sharp puff of breath. We're traveling together, Kai. There's no room to be prude. You're going to see a lot worse than this. She paused, then added flatly. What happens when I need to change a rag? Need to what? Void's below, Kai, really? Eira rolled her eyes, continuing to strap on her armor with the same casual efficiency. Buckles clicked, leather creaked, and Kai kept his focus firmly on gathering his own supplies, acutely aware of every sound behind him. You can look now, boy, she said, amusement clear in her tone. I'm decent. Kai turned back to find her fully armored, pack slung over her shoulder, watching him with a smirk. She moved toward the small window and peered out into the inky world beyond. The veil's thinning, she said. Let's get as much travel out of the churn as we can. Kai pushed himself up from his makeshift bed, his muscles stiff from the restless night. He rolled his shoulders, shaking off the remnants of the dream, and began securing his own gear with perhaps a little more focus than necessary. Ready? Eira asked, already out the door. Kai secured the crystal at his belt and nodded, still avoiding direct eye contact. Ready.